Well, guys, I am so happy to be here with you today at this fabulous conference. I feel like I'm at a family reunion. Do you guys feel like that too? It just feels like we're at a family reunion, right? Love this conference. And I know the clock is already ticking on me, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to dive right in here. Life is a journey. Life is a journey. It's a quest that our souls undertake, not only to move ourselves forward, but also to help each other make progress. We do this because as sparks of the source, we're all connected to each other. And as one of us advances, we all grow. We're evolving together. And this is a universal truth that we learn as we wake up to who and what we truly are. And waking up and making that process easier is what I'm here to talk with you about today. And my guide group, the GG, they've asked me to focus on several challenges that many of us have, are having, or will face as we continue to wake up and move forward. So number one on the GG's list for today is feelings. Author Gloria Naylor said, "I don't believe life is supposed to make you feel good or to make you feel miserable either. It's just supposed to make you feel." Well, if you think about it, at the core of every experience that we have, what is there? There's a feeling, right? And some feelings can be very difficult to deal with. And I'm talking here about hurt feelings, feelings of guilt, feelings of pain and heartache, because these feelings can adversely affect us if we let them. Sometimes to the point that we have a hard time recovering from them, which can cause us to waste countless windows of opportunity to do what we came here to do and learn what we came here to learn. When crappy things happen to us, or when tragedy strikes us or a loved one, it's very, very easy for us to blame other people for our misfortunes. As we begin to wake up, one of the most difficult things for us to wrap our heads around is the understanding that we are the ones who create the situations that we find ourselves dealing with, be they happy or sad. We plan nearly every single thing that happens to us during our lifetimes, just like we choose our immediate family and just like we choose our friends. And that means that the responsibility for what's going on in our lives and how we handle what's going on in our lives ultimately belongs to us. There's no getting around this. There's no getting around it. And it's one of the reasons that waking up can be so hard. And you know what? It's unquestionably easier to stay asleep, to keep our eyes closed to the truth, to blame other people for what happens to us, to accept whatever fate throws our way, and swirl through life like a leaf caught up in a whirlpool. But as we awaken, though, we can't blindly churn through life anymore. And if we do continue to swirl, it's because we choose to swirl. As we wake up and we learn that we are truly responsible for our own lives, the alternative to churning aimlessly, well, the alternative is this. We have to put on our big light worker pants and we have to start making better choices, right? Choices that will allow us to accomplish our goals faster, easier, and with less drama and pain. Now, once we've had an experience and we have felt the feelings that go along with it, we don't have to keep repeating the same experience over and over and over again to the point where we create a relentless life script for ourselves. Instead, we can take the bull by the horns, we can take a reflective look at a specific experience, we can figure out what we could have done better, and we can prepare ourselves for the next time that a similar window of opportunity opens up for us. And another opportunity will come around because we personally designed windows upon windows upon windows to make sure that we meet our goals for this lifetime. And when it comes to planning our lives, the GG asked me to touch on why it seems like our prayers for help sometimes go unanswered. We've all had the experience, haven't we, of praying and praying for something or someone, and it just seems like our prayers are being ignored. Yeah, am I the only one who's had that happen? We've all had that happen, right? And sometimes when that happens, we become angry. We become angry with God for not helping with specific needs that we've made very clear through prayer. What my guides say about unanswered prayers is this: when we are making our plans for an upcoming incarnation, we may well give orders to the effect of, no matter how much I beg, no matter how much I plead, no matter how much I ask you to help me, please do not help me, because I need to make sure that I learn this lesson, or I need to make sure that I feel these feelings. As difficult as this is to swallow, and this is why waking up is sometimes so hard to do, we are the ones who are hands-on when it comes to setting our goals and creating a plan for our lives. And no one, not God, not the angels, are going to alter our plan if we have told them not to interfere. But there is something that we can do to make things easier for ourselves, even if we've given a non-interference directive. Here's what we can do. We can learn to spot our windows of opportunity. My guide group is unwavering in their advice that we should learn to spot windows of opportunity early so that we can learn our lessons closer to the ground floor instead of up in the penthouse, because doing so will save us a lot of pain, suffering, and drama. Now, as we wake up and we learn about windows, we have a decision to make. Are we going to make the time to master the skill of spotting windows so that we can make better choices? Or are we going to close our eyes and allow life scripts to trap us in an ever-echoing maelstrom of the same old, same old? I'm going to take a wild guess here, and I'm going to guess that everybody in this room would rather end a life script than continue to repeat it. So I've got a 3-step plan of action from the GG to help us get unstuck. Step number one is to accept the fact that we're responsible for planning our own lives. And that means making the choice to move from Poor Me Avenue over to Take Responsibility Court. And that's a big move, guys. It's a big move, and it's not easy at all, because there's a lot of stuff that we have to contemplate as we make this choice, not the least of which is the tendency that some of us have to blame others for our perceived misfortunes, and the knee-jerk reaction that many of us have to spew negative energy all over the place when we're faced with crappy situations. Taking responsibility for ourselves and for our own lives is a very big deal. Step 2 is to take the time to master the skill of spotting windows of opportunity as they open or while they're still open, rather than after they've already closed. Learning to spot windows is like learning any other skill. It just takes practice. And windows are everywhere. They're at home, they're at work, they're even at the grocery store. And the best way to start seeing windows in the present is to examine the past and look for patterns that make up our life scripts. So, let's quickly go over how we can discern patterns in our lives. First of all, if we draw similar situations to ourselves, the universe is trying to get our attention. If we continue to attract the same type of person into our lives, the universe is sending us a message. If we have similar disagreements with people over and over again, and we think, what the heck is wrong with all of these people, right? Another way to look at it is that they just might be providing us with a window of opportunity, and maybe we need to pay attention. And another way is this: ask your family and friends. Ask your family and friends, because sometimes the people closest to us, they've noticed patterns and scripts that we overlook. It happens, right? So be brave and ask. And if your family and friends are anything like mine, they'll be happy to tell you. Now, once we discover a pattern or a life script, we can apply this knowledge to what's going on in our lives right now. For instance, is there a similarity between situations that we find ourselves in now or what we've been through in the past? If the answer is yes, then we've discovered a life script and a window. Comparing the past to the present will help us identify windows that are open for us right now. It will also help us recognize windows much closer to the ground floor, which will make our lives much easier in the long run. Step number 3. We have to take action. Step 3 is take action. When we recognize an open window, we can draw on how we handled a similar situation in the past, and then we have to do something different this time around. We know that what we've done previously didn't work because we continue to attract parallel circumstances or opportunities into our lives. So our job now is to find a way to change things up this time or the next time around. Maybe we need an attitude adjustment. Maybe we change up the way we react to things. It depends on the situation. It depends on what we've done in the past. But what's called for here is a highly personal plan of action that only we can create for ourselves. No one can do it for us. Now, if we recognize a window after it's already closed, let's not beat ourselves up over it. The first thing that we want to do in this case is to give ourselves a great big congratulatory slap on the back for noticing it at all, because it's a very big deal to notice a window of opportunity. Then look at how you dealt with the situation and figure out now, ahead of time, what to do differently when the next window opens. And when that next window opens, it will be more difficult than the last one, because each time a new window opens, they become increasingly more in our faces and dramatic, so that we do eventually take appropriate action. And that is why learning to spot windows, learning from our experiences, and making a plan of action so that we're ready for that next window just makes good sense. And taking these 3 steps that we just talked about, I'm not going to lie to you, it's hard work. It's emotional work. It's revealing work. But you know what? And I'm going to confess this to you now. I cried my eyes out. I cried my eyes out when I discovered my very first script. And let me tell you something. I would have said that I had absolutely no life scripts. I would be the first one in this room to say, me, life script? No, I have none. But let me tell you, I've had a lot of them. But the first life script that I recognized, it had to do with my ongoing attraction to men who loved to control me. And it was like a lightning bolt just struck me when I realized that I and I alone had the power to undo this and to change my life. And had I only known about windows of opportunity earlier, I might have ended that pattern so much closer to the ground floor. If I had done the work sooner, I could have avoided that last awful relationship where my ex-fiancé just flung me up against a wall and spit in my face. Guys, I could have lived without the spit. Really, I could have. But in retrospect, I have to say, I think that spit helped me wake up. You never know, right? But you know what? Even after I learned about windows and I learned what to do to learn the lesson and move on, I still didn't always recognize the patterns in my life right away, because it takes practice, it takes awareness. And case in point, I still think about a pattern of mine that a friend pointed out to me one day at lunch. It was shortly after I finished the first draft of Windows of Opportunity, and she had just finished looking it over for me. So we're sitting there having lunch, and I'm telling her about all the rude people that I keep running into in the grocery store. They're banging into me with their carts, they're blocking the aisle, they're doing all these things that are just annoying the heck out of me, and I'm sitting there complaining about it. And I will never forget this. She put her fork down, she looked me in the eye, and she said, "Sherri, really? Did you read your own book? What are you doing to attract this behavior?" I mean, what could I say? She was right. She was right. I went into that store expecting
people to be rude. And my attitude and my behavior mirrored that. So there was no doubt that there was a lesson for me at Publix, but when I changed my behavior and I started smiling at people instead of scowling at them, lo and behold, my grocery store script went away. Now, if you're ready to start developing your window spotting skills, here's what to do. First thing, if you're anything at all like me, grab a box of tissues. Then, set aside even just 10 minutes a day, just a couple of times a week to meditate, examine what's going on in your life, and work on connecting the dots and discovering the patterns. And then take the appropriate action that only you can formulate. It's as easy as that, and it's as hard as that. Now, let's move on to the next matter of business that the GG wants covered today. Another reason that waking up can be hard on us is that many of us have a tendency to pursue more spiritual and metaphysical trains of thought. We positively thirst for universal truths. And to quench that thirst, we have a tendency to become free thinkers. Free thought is a philosophical point of view where it's felt that one's opinion should be formed on logic, reason, and research, and that we should not simply accept ideas or information because secular or religious leaders, authority figures, or traditions tell us to think or believe or behave in a certain way. Now, a metaphysician takes free thought to a whole other level and seeks answers to the questions that human beings have been asking since the beginning of time. Who are we? Why are we here? What the heck is my mission? Metaphysics and free thinking are both concerned with being, how beings relate to each other, and where we fit into the bigger universal picture of life. As we wake up, we begin to stretch beyond the boundaries of conventional thought and religious beliefs. We start to investigate such matters as life after death, communication with spirit, reincarnation, and karma. Think about this. In order to communicate directly with spirit, we first have to believe that such a thing is not only possible, but doable, right? Would you agree? Yeah? Then you're a metaphysician and a free thinker. There you go. To truly evolve, which becomes a conscious goal for us once we're awake, to become all that we can be, to reach our goals, to fulfill our mission, to learn, to grow, to be, we must each follow our own path. We must allow ourselves to think freely, and we must free ourselves from dogma that keeps us from moving forward. So, why do the GG think that this is a hard part of waking up? For two reasons. First, because we're no longer sheep. We are no longer sheep who blindly follow others. Instead, we are following our gut. We are following that little voice within, and we are reaching out and we are searching for truth, even though that truth can be challenging and or agonizing to deal with. And secondly, because if we're not careful with our words and actions, we could end up isolating ourselves from our friends and family if we insist on pushing our point of view on folks who may not be ready for it. You know, we all walk a personal path. Not all of us are on the same stepping stone. Not everyone is ready to pursue the truth. Not everyone is ready to talk about karma, reincarnation, communication with spirit, or especially to take responsibility for their own lives. Now, over the years, I found that the best way for me to talk about my personal beliefs is to let other people ask me about them when they're ready. Now, I might drop a hint during a conversation, maybe even throw out one of our new agey little buzzwords. And if anything resonates with them and they ask what I mean, they ask for my opinion, I'll happily give it. I'm happy to open up. But I always try to explain what I think in a way that doesn't demean or put down whatever that person's current beliefs might be. And I do it this way because, well, none of us here today were born awake, were we? Heck no, we weren't born awake. We each woke up in our own time and in our own way. And that's why I think that one of the hardest parts of waking up is allowing other people to do the same thing. Remembering that we're all on different paths, none of which is more right or wrong than another, can be really hard to do. Really hard to do when we're so excited about the new things that we're discovering on our own journey. But we can't try to control what other people think because that would be messing around with free will. But who can we control? Who can we control? Ourselves, absolutely. That's right. We can control ourselves. And coming to grips with that, ladies and gentlemen, can be a very challenging part of waking up. And speaking about controlling ourselves, that takes us right into the next reason that waking up can be so hard to do, and it's this: acknowledging the fact that our actions, the actions of just one person, affects all of us collectively. When I first started speaking today, I mentioned that we're all connected to each other, and as one of us advances, we all grow. At the core of being awake is the understanding that what we do affects others and what others do affects us. And to this information, I just got to say, I mean, it's hard enough, isn't it, coming to terms with the fact that we planned our own lives and now we find out that we're connected to everybody else? This is a lot of information. And when we're done rolling our eyes at this news, we can take a nice deep breath in and then start to warm up to the universal truth of it. We are sparks of the Creator, Source, God. So it must be true that we're connected. It just makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about what that means to us, starting with what my guides call relationship villains. Relationship villains are fellow souls who are our closest universal friends when we're on the other side of the veil. But for this incarnation, they have volunteered to play the part of the bad guy to help us cross something very important off of our must-learn list. They are fellow souls who love us enough to play the role of the villain to help us accomplish our goals. Now, these relationship villains, they help us move forward by acting as catalysts. They are catalysts for windows of opportunity to open for us. And they do this in a couple of different ways. They may create, or more correctly, co-create situations that provide us with a window to learn or experience or feel something that's very important to us. And or they might take action that forces us to stay on a certain path or to take another road, one that will result in a more direct route to where we want to go, although we might not realize it at the time when it's happening. So who are these relationship villains? Well, they can be anybody and they can pop up anytime. Look for them especially in romantic relationships, family relationships, and work relationships, but they also turn up at school. For me, at the grocery store, they turn up at the airport. Anywhere we happen to be, there could be a relationship villain. Now, they can be somebody that we have an ongoing relationship with. They can be somebody we interact with just once or twice. They can be somebody who bumps into us as we're standing in line to check out. When we learn our lesson, though, or start to move in the right direction again, our relationship with our villain will become much more palatable, much easier, which, very thankfully, is usually the case when the villain is a family member. And sometimes a relationship that we have, it might just simply end because our mission together is just over. And that happens a lot of times with friends and acquaintances. Now, if you have a relationship that continues to be bumpy, you can be pretty sure that there's a window of opportunity waiting to be discovered, and you need to pay attention to what's going on. And when it comes to spotting relationship villains, there are some things that we can do to actively become aware of them. Since relationship villains are catalysts for opening windows of opportunity throughout our lives, we look for them the same way that we look for windows of opportunity, by watching for patterns and life scripts. So, to spot relationship villains in our lives at the present time, try asking yourself the following questions. Are you involved in any ongoing arguments or unpleasant situations that are caused by the same person? Is there somebody who is just continually a thorn in your side? If yes, then that person may well be a relationship villain working very, very hard to help you learn a lesson. So consider the circumstances and look for patterns to help you figure out what changes you can make when you're interacting with this person. Another thing that we can do is to carefully review the circumstances around our interface with a possible villain and consider the following. Did I learn or could I learn anything from my experience with this person? How would things have been different for me if I had handled the situation in another way? Speaking from personal experience, I can think of several times when somebody that I really thought did me wrong and did me wrong in a big way actually made things easier for me in the long run. But I didn't realize that until months or years after whatever I was mad at them for took place. Hindsight is 20/20, right? Hindsight is 20/20, which is precisely why it behooves us to study what's happening in our lives and figure out what we've missed in the past so that we can take advantage of that next window, learn that lesson, and be free to move forward. Now, there's much more, though, to being connected than playing the villain for each other. And we are all in that villain role at one time or another. We don't just have relationship villains. We are relationship villains for other people, too. But you've heard of the universal consciousness, yes? Yes? Okay. I know, I need responses here. Okay. It's also known as the universal mind, but the universal consciousness is a spiritual database, right? It's a vast ocean of knowledge that we have created together and that we can tap into for guidance and ideas. Now, one of the best explanations of the universal consciousness that I've ever come across was written by a woman named Tanya Katsos, and she writes for mindyourreality.com. Here's what Tanya has to say about waking up and learning about the universal consciousness. Whichever way you cut it, you come to one unavoidable conclusion. There is but one consciousness of which your consciousness must be a part. The nature of the universal mind is omniscience, all-knowing, omnipotence, all-powerful, omniscience, all-creative, and omnipresence, always present. Know that this too is your nature. You have access to all knowledge, known and unknown. You have access to an infinite power for which nothing is impossible. You have access to the limitless creativity of the Creator. All these attributes are present within you at all times in their potential form. This makes perfect sense when we view the soul as what it is, a piece of God's source creator. We are all made of the same stuff, and we are all connected to God's source creator and to each other via the universal mind. Here's a little something that my guide Selena channeled on this very same subject. Selena says, "Greetings to all, and let us talk about the gathering of information and the formulation of ideas. Every day, your unconscious mind is receiving information from your higher self and pulling information from the great universal consciousness, information that, when downloaded into the conscious mind, becomes an idea. Great ideas come to many in body, yet few act on them. Often you will have action thoughts, meaning you have a gut reaction to something and act accordingly. Sometimes a thought will pop into your head about something you should do later, and sometimes thoughts will enter your mind about something that needs improvement. All of these things can be placed in the category of ideas, yet there is so much more that can be accomplished when you sit quietly and allow your unconscious mind to tap into the universal consciousness. The bottom line of my message is that by sitting in silence for a few minutes and then paying attention to the information that comes through, you will awaken to great ideas. Ideas that will make your life and mission easier, ideas that will allow you to fulfill your dreams, and ideas that will help others too. That is the power of you. Go in peace." Now, I'm very glad that Selena ended her message by reminding us of our power. We are powerful entities in our own right. And as we wake up to the realization that we're all connected, we begin to perceive that by being connected, we can and do help each other evolve, because that is the power of us. And that takes us to the final topic that the GG asked me to talk about today. Nothing keeps us from standing in our own power like fear. Fear is another reason why waking up is hard to do. As we wake up, the first thing we need to know about fear is that it's possible, important, and wholly within our power to overcome it. And we want to overcome it because fear is something that keeps us from moving forward. It keeps us from evolving. Sometimes the things that we're afraid of represent residual fear from experiences we've had during previous lifetimes. Sometimes what we fear is the result of something that happened to us during our current lifetime. But regardless of where the fear originated, facing our fears one by one and overcoming them begins with the understanding that we absolutely do have the power to overcome them. And the rewards for facing our fears include increased confidence, stress reduction, accelerated spiritual growth, and higher vibrations. Now, whether our fear is residual or new, our ego feeds it. Our ego is only a small part of who we are. The ego reflects itself in our personality, but it's really just much more of a cover identity for this incarnation. And as we continue to raise our vibrations and we wake up more and more to who we really are, part of our evolutionary process involves breaking free of the ego and becoming aware that we are so much more than the role that we're currently playing. At the heart of being awake is the knowing that we are an aspect of God's source creator, and the knowing that as such, we have the power to overcome our fears and create better lives for ourselves. One of the reasons I think that fear is able to overtake us sometimes is because many of us try to avoid it instead of facing it head on. It seems like the smart thing to do to avoid what we're afraid of, right? But how does the universe work, guys? The universe gives us whatever we focus on, right? That's the way the universe works. So if we focus on something that we're afraid of, what's going to happen? We're going to attract more of it into our lives, right? So by trying to avoid what we fear, we end up spending more time thinking about it, which tells the universe that it's something that we're interested in and that we want more of. And this is a prime example of why watching our thoughts and our words is so very important. And it's an excellent example of the power that each of us has to create our own reality. Meditation. Meditation will allow us to quiet our minds, and it will provide our higher selves with an opportunity to help us understand and accept who we are on a soul level, which will help us move past our ego. And when it comes to overcoming our fears, the best way to get started is to start by facing them. And here's one way to get started. Define exactly what it is you're afraid of, examine it, recognize it, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Stop dwelling on it. We have to stop dwelling on it. Now, if you run into trouble letting it go, meditate with intention about how to neutralize that fear. Sit down in a quiet place and ask your higher self for help in letting go of that fear that you're holding on to. Listen for advice and listen for guidance from your higher self. And then follow what your gut, follow what that little voice within says to you. And to let your fear go, a great way to do it is to visualize it. Actually, visualize it leaving you. Like a bird flying south for the winter, off goes your fear into the sunset. You have the power to do this. We all have the power to do this. And the sooner we acknowledge that we are powerful beings and that our ego is no match for our soul, the quicker we'll be able to let go of fear and move forward. We have looked now at several ways that waking up can be hard on us, and we've talked about how to make it easier on ourselves. And before I wrap this up, because I know the clock is ticking here, there's just one more thing that I want to talk about. I want to take a quick look at a wonderful and magnificent benefit of being awake, which is the ability to consciously live an authentic life. To be honest with you, I did not always think that it was possible to live an authentic life. And I've spent a lot of time recently contemplating this concept, this subject. And I've come to the realization that the notion of living an authentic life, it is no longer metaphysical theory. Living an authentic life is a concept that is now very much mainstream, which I think is a great thing because I think it's an indicator of evolutionary progress. Yet it seems to me that being authentic can mean different things to different people. For me, being authentic means being true to yourself, being true to who you are at the core of your being. But I also think that it means acknowledging what you're feeling at any given moment. And in that way, being authentic is connected to mindfulness. It also seems to me that as we start out on the authentic path, there may be repercussions to being 100% genuine if we're not mindful of the ways that we express ourselves. For instance, should we say exactly what we think or feel, even if it's going to hurt somebody's feelings? Or is it better to take a few moments to find a better way or perhaps more socially acceptable words with which to express ourselves? And allow me, if you will, to share with you that recently, after dealing repeatedly with the same issue at work over and over and over again, I finally decided to open up about my feelings to somebody who was in a position to help. For several months, windows of opportunity were open for me, but I kept my mouth shut. Even with everything that I know and I've written about, I kept my mouth shut. And here's why. I was afraid. I was afraid because what if I spoke up and things didn't go my way, right? Well, if I hadn't spoken up, one thing is for sure, more and more windows would open up on this subject and they would all be harder, right? So fortunately for me, I decided to listen to that little voice within. I opened up, I changed the way that I dealt with it, and everything got better. And what I learned from this experience, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because what I learned is this. Living an authentic life can also help us get through our windows faster and easier. And in fact, it was learning about living an authentic life that gave me that little nudge, that little push that I needed to speak up. And that was a big change in my behavior. Now, I'm still studying what it means to live an authentic life, and I'm especially interested in learning as much as I can about how to reconcile living an authentic life within the confines of existing social and work paradigms. And for answers to some of my questions, I went to Shelley Wilson. Because it was in Shelley's books, Journey into Consciousness and 28 Days to a New You, where I initially learned about being authentic. And I've got some words of wisdom to share with you right now that are direct from Shelley. And for those of you who don't know, Shelley happens to be the executive editor of Om Times magazine, and she will be speaking here on Sunday and also facilitating a workshop on Monday. Here's what Shelley shared with me when I went to her with my questions. Living authentically involves being genuine with all people you come into contact with. This means not being afraid to be yourself or to feel the need to hide certain aspects of yourself due to fear of what others may think. It's necessary to allow the real deal to shine through always. In other words, you are aligning your thoughts, words, and actions with your beliefs. You are walking your talk and talking your walk. I feel that it is important to always be conscious of the energy you are putting out to the universe. Being mindful of the words you choose to express is being considerate of others' feelings, yet still being authentic. It's important to honor and respect everyone's beliefs, yet not always energetically appropriate to share your own. In no way do I feel that if you choose to remain silent, are you being less than authentic. Rather, you may simply be showing compassion. Thank you so much, Shelley, for those words. I think that this is just great advice. Yeah, give her a hand. Shelley, yay. Thank you. You helped me out of a really bad situation with those words, so thank you. And I think this is great advice, guys, no matter where we happen to be on our journey. And you know what? I can't help but think that as we work to consciously live a more authentic life, we're also expediting our spiritual growth. I think these things go hand in hand. And I know my time is up, so let me just say this. Waking up is hard to do. It's hard to do. But you know what? It's a whole lot better than being asleep at the wheel of life. Would you agree? And look around the room. Look around this room. We have each other to lean on for help and support because we're all connected to each other on this great journey called life. Thank you for being on this journey with me. And thank you also for being part of this talk today. And I hope that you'll stop by my table. Let's chat. Let's talk about your journey. We'll talk about mine. And for anybody who's interested, I'm doing a special workshop on Sunday night where we're going to balance our chakras to raise our vibrations. And we're going to try out a couple of ways to communicate directly with spirit, the ways that I use. And it's going to be an action-packed 2 hours. And I hope to see many of you there. Thank you again so much for being here today. Namaste.